All right, folks, good afternoon. And it is that time of the week. It is the middle of the week. It is Wednesday. This is Happy Wellness Wednesday, where we bring you the latest information news on health, your health, wellness, and lifestyle. And I'm joined by my colleague here on the Marketplace Show Reset, segment number 1 on our health. Linda, Dr. Donna, former Congresswoman Dr. Donna Christensen, and our registered nurse, Yvette Wood. Ladies, how are you doing today? Linda, did I say? I'm sure I said Linda. Did I say Linda? I don't know.
You did.
I might have it like a. Okay, good.
You did.
So, how are you ladies doing? How are you ladies doing today?
We're well.
Doing
Fine.
well.
Mm-hmm.
Just cruising a little
You guys
bit.
are looking. You guys are looking great.
Thank you.
So are you?
All right. Everybody seems like a little bit reserved today. Is what today? Tomorrow's Veterans Day, right? So tomorrow's
Yes.
Veterans Day, right?
Yes.
Yep, it is. And
Right. Now, do we get? Is there like a day off or no? It is just a day that we acknowledge.
no, it's a holiday. It's a federal holiday.
So when do they get the legal time off? Today or tomorrow? I mean on
Tomorrow,
Friday.
on the day.
On the day. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know sometimes when holidays fall on a certain day, they'll give you either the day before or the day after. So
Not
I'm
Veterans
sure.
Day though. Veterans Day is always the 11th of November. And we have actually our activities in the Virgin Islands started on the weekend in St. John, but they'll be in St. Croix tomorrow at 9
Okay.
o'clock.
Well, I would like to extend and wish those men and women who have served our country in a very valiant way, the sacrifice, dedication, and democracy isn't free, and it is a price to pay for that. And so certainly when it comes to those who have served in our armed forces, military, this is when we say thank you for your services,
Absolutely.
and to those men and women who in this country have done so. So happy Veterans Day, folks.
And I want to add, Tony, let's also say thank you to the families,
Absolutely. Yes.
veteran families who, hold down those households in support of that veteran or veterans in their home. And it's important as well because it takes a whole village.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So do any of you have anyone here has a veteran in their family? I'm not aware of any of my family.
I mean, mine are deceased now, but my father, my uncle, I have a great uncle that served in both World War I and World War II.
Wow.
Was honored for that when he was still alive. So I have a lot of veterans. My husband also a Vietnam veteran.
Yeah, my father, my uncle, who's still alive, was in Air Force, and a lot of the men, particularly of a certain generation, are veterans, and so it's something that we hope to pass on to the next generation as a viable career choice, and being able to do just about everything that you can do in the civilian world in support of keeping our country safe and our allies around the world. And so it's a great career choice. Wish I had known. I would have gone into the military, but certain schools you were put on a certain track, and that's where you went.
Yeah, my grandmother was a World War II veteran. She was one of the first women of color to enter into the military.
Yeah.
She made her transition 3 years ago at the age of 94. And my father was military, and I have a brother who's currently military.
Okay. Well, thank you. I want to thank your
So
family.
we look forward to honoring them all tomorrow and every day for the service that they've given.
Absolutely. One of the things, and before we bring up our guests, one of the things that somebody needs to explain to me, why is it that in this country, when it comes to veteran affairs, why is that such a why can't we get it right? I just don't understand. I don't know any other way to say it. I mean, the constant, criticism and the fact that the veterans are not being treated or taken care of properly. I don't understand. Why is it if men and women who have served this country in the military, in the armed forces, and they're back home now, and they struggle with everything from mental challenges to housing, to what you call it, decent just care.
One of the things is it shouldn't really be a it shouldn't be a political crony job, one that you give to a supporter. It really should be someone who has the kind of administrative knowledge and experience, and hopefully it was a veteran as well. But we've had some good ones. When I first went to Congress, there was was it Jesse Brown?
Mm.
And he was excellent. He was there for quite a while. And I haven't heard much lately, but so we'll see what this administration does and how they do in taking care of our veterans.
I would just like for them to. I would like to just finally fix it, because I constantly hear how broken the system is. The system is for every administration going back for God knows how long. It's always the same. The system is dysfunctional. It doesn't work. And so, what's the problem?
It will take a bunch of segments for us to get to
Yes.
that, Anthony. I mean, it's horrible, from housing to healthcare to mental health care to just the overall well-being. They have been so neglected, and it breaks my heart, because they should be the first that we take care of. They sacrifice so much, and even their lives. And why we tend to mistreat them in the United States, I'm with you. I don't get it. I really don't.
When we were doing the Affordable Care Act, was it then? Yeah. And we were adding offices of minority health to different agencies. We thought we didn't have to do one at VA, but it turned out that we did. If there were disparities in healthcare, even in the VA system as well, the overall system has been problems. I can remember some meetings that we had with the person running that agency, but to think that there were even healthcare disparities in the Veterans Administration system was something I did not expect to find.
Well, let me just say,
let me just also kind of put a balance on that. We do have a diminishing, because one of my clients is a veteran organization that's growing, and it's been enlightening to understand that we actually have a diminishing number of veterans. And so the per capita cost in the States per veteran has gone up, while the numbers of veterans served has gone down. And so therefore there's a reshuffling of those allocations. And in some cases, yes, there's a gap that does create these health disparities, economic disparities, social services disparities. That becomes very challenging for our legislators to reconcile. But then there's also a lot of services that I'm convinced now that our veterans really do not even understand, and services for their families. On the University of Maryland in the College Roberts School of Business, there's in many campuses, there's an entire military service corps for students. So there, ROTC is one. My daughter's in the ROTC in her high school, as an example, and possibly will gateway into ROTC. So she's in junior ROTC. But even beyond that, in terms of providing the educational resources and then all the wraparound services. So perhaps there's really a need for a stronger set of PR around this issue, so that it's not a matter of mistreatment. Maybe it's also a matter of education, and how do we help our veterans and their families know all the resources that are available to them, particularly if they're heading into the military and signing up for all of that going forward. So if you sign up for your PhD, your bachelor's, your master's program, and you want the military to pay, you got to designate that on the front end. And you got to put that out there, but who's letting those individuals know? So
we have a local office here, and I think they've been doing a pretty good job in reaching out, making sure that every veteran is registered, first of all, and then educating and bringing over. Unfortunately, our VA main hospital is in Puerto Rico, so that's been a challenge. But there have been some changes that have made healthcare more accessible to our veterans on our own islands. So I think our local office has really been a great advocate. I don't know if every state has a local veterans office.
And they do. And in addition to that, their freestanding medical facilities are now popping up because there's a lot of
Have those.
there in terms of building those free medical, so that you don't have the large veteran or VA hospital scenarios that are so much like we see the clinics and freestanding medical facilities, where it's a private public partnership. So investors are
Okay.
those
All right,
opportunities.
ladies, thank you for that.
Okay.
Thank you for that,
Yeah,
ladies.
we got to
Thank you so
segue
much for
to
that.
our
Yeah,
caregivers.
so I would like to just say again one more time on the issue of lifestyle on this segment. We want to be able to say to the lawmakers, to the policymakers, to those who are responsible for taking care of our vets, let's give the quality of life that our veterans deserve. Please, let's
Amen.
finally fix the system that is broken. Let's fix it. Thank you so much. And we have our special guest in the studio in the background waiting. Please do the honors or tell us who we have on the program today, please.
Okay, we have Miss Betty Pettis. Betty is a nurse. She is a humanitarian. She has tons of things that she does for the community and for healthcare. She's here to focus with us today on caregiving and what it means to be a caregiving and what happens to the caregiver. We cannot let our caregivers become exhausted. This is National Health Awareness Month, and one of those items are caregiving, as well as Alzheimer's and diabetes. And the National Smokeout Day is also this month. There's a lot of health awareness issues for the month of November, and Betty's here to focus with us on one that's close to my heart, and I think all our whole panel's heart, and that's caregiving, because we've all been caregivers, and if you haven't, you will be if you live long enough. So Betty, welcome to our segment
Yes.
of Our Health. We're glad you are here with us to share your expertise on this topic.
Betty, thank you so much for being
Well,
here. Thank you so much.
For having me. Thank you very much.
So, as I was saying, it is Health Awareness National Caregivers Month. So, can you share with us a little bit about what it means to truly be a caregiver?
Well, I think one of the most important things about being a caregiver is to be an advocate. It's very difficult to robotically be a caregiver. You have to actually be engaged in what you're doing. And it's advocacy, the biggest thing, because it's not just the basic caregiving of, medication, bathing, whatever. You have to be an advocate, especially in today's climate, where, as you all were talking about, the lack of knowledge or the lack of access to information. You have to be able to share that information and make sure that the person that you're taking care of, or even the family that you're taking care of, actually is aware of the resources that are available to them.
Absolutely. And so, with that, as being an advocate, you're saying that this, as a caregiver advocate, when that person gets sick, you need to equip yourself with all the information to make sure that they're receiving the proper care, to be sure that you're aware of the type of insurance they have and what it covers, to be aware of their disease states and the processes and everything that goes with that. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's very difficult to navigate our healthcare system. The VA, the private care, is very difficult. I was really interested in you all when you were talking about the VA, because I actually used to work at the Little Rock VA hospital. And one of the things was the advocacy and the lack of information. Another aspect of that was, for some reason, I don't know why, there is a attitude. Now, I'm not a veteran, but I have family members that are vets, and I went to the VA to work because I almost went to the military because my family was Air Force. And I got down to the bottom line and I chickened out. So my contribution was to quit the job that I had to go to the VA and work. I felt like that was the least that I could do. One of the things that I found was that there's this attitude, if you're not, and I don't understand all this, if you're service connected or not service connected, that should make a difference in your level of care. And as an advocate, once I kind of figured out what was going on, I was a strong advocate it's not our responsibility to look on that chart and to decide if someone is service connected or not service connected. Our job is to take care of that patient, no matter what status, whether they never left the United States, whether they actually fought. That's not our responsibility. So there was a big attitude. That's how I can describe it, as an attitude that is, if you were one level, you got treated differently, and if you had another level of service. And so that's the advocacy part I'm talking about.
And I think that still exists. For us here, I think, as I was saying earlier, our main hospital is in Puerto Rico, and the access to those services are different for service connected than non-service connected. They can still go, but they may have to pay for their travel or some part of their service if they're not service connected. I don't remember exactly, but I used to be into all of that years ago. And but you do have
But
to advocate.
if you're a veteran, and I worked in ICU, if you're a veteran coming into ICU, it does not matter
Oh
what
my
you're
goodness,
connected.
no.
Of course.
That's
You
true.
need to
That's
advocate.
true.
It
Any
almost
part
feels
of
like
it at the VA.
personalized medicine. It almost feels like the culture of what we understand as socialized medicine. And that is, treat at minimum and move through the masses. And so I wonder if there is something that we need to do from a cultural, societal standpoint that really puts a different lens around not only veterans, and that's a good orientation to how caregivers, because there are a lot of extreme situations there when we have veteran homes, home health aides who work specifically with the veteran community, or we have our old soldiers' homes, as we know them, we call them here in the DC area, where all those services are provided. And supposedly you're getting at least quality standard care, or standard care. Whether you're getting top-notch care remains to be seen, in the opinion of the veterans. And that level of caregiving that supports that network is so vital, because there may be an assumption that those that kind of socialized medicine safety net will always be there, and that's not necessarily true.
Absolutely. I would like to kind of share this story and have Betty's opinion, as well as my peers' opinion on this. When I was working as a nurse, I had a woman who came in who'd fallen down the steps, and she was terrified. I mean, terrified of being placed in a rehabilitation center, because she had heard so many horrible stories about what happens when her family leaves. And so they hired a caregiver to come and sit with her, so that she would not feel alone. But then she was terrified of the caregiver.
Mhm.
So I say, and my question is, what is it about caregivers that has people so terrified to hire them? What are we doing wrong? Because I'm a nurse and I consider myself a caregiver. Betty, you're a nurse, you're a caregiver. I know, Linda, Miss Dorman, you took care of your mom. You were a caregiver. What is it? And I know, Dr. Christensen, you too have provided care for your family member.
Mhm.
What is it that makes people so terrified to get a caregiver? Is it that they don't want to seem like they need somebody to take care of them?
That's part of it.
Okay.
In some cases, I know.
Yes, that is part.
Go ahead. Go. No, you go ahead, Betty, and you.
No, you're right. That is part of it, because there's, like I said, there's a lot of facets to it, but that is part of it, because a lot of older people, or people that can't take care of themselves, they see the next step from not being able to 100% care for yourself is going to a nursing home. And they don't want to do that. And a lot of it has to do with the type of programs that have been in the past. We have really changed our caregiving model as far as what I call it personal care or home health care, from just a sitter to someone that actually has been trained. Now, currently I'm working with a company and we provide personal care services, but all of our caregivers have gone through an award-winning program that was developed by Harvard University. And it's just not picking somebody up off the street and putting them in the caregiver role. Before we even hire anybody, we have to go through a lot of personality tests and different things like that to weed out those people that may have some other issues going on, and they see a caregiver, a vulnerable patient, as a way to take out that frustration. Now, obviously, that's not everybody, but there are some really kind of disturbed people that pick out the caregiving role, especially if you that patient and you're the only one in that home to take out that whatever frustration they have on that vulnerable patient. So we do a lot of screening to try to eliminate that as much as possible. But a lot of the typical model, and it's hard to change attitudes when this is what you've seen for so many years, is that if you have a caregiver, number one, that's the next step to a nursing home, and that caregiver is always going to abuse you. So this also has to go with more education and more exposure to things have changed, even though they're not 100% correct. Things have changed, but that attitude is still there.
I also think that there's a lot of, in the referral process, home health care, since it's such a personal service, ultimately, that you're seeking information from your immediate sphere of influences, your network, your peers who are also seeking caregivers, and trading those war stories becomes really the narrative versus what's the better narrative to be able to promote out there. So I think the industry itself needs a very big boost in its public relations to help all of us who have procured those services understand this is a very keen and very vital part of your elder care process. And maybe not just in the elder care, just, maybe you have an incapacitated child that also you have to bring in a care person for, or even yourself is assisting you. So I think that there needs to, that's one of the issues, is that there's not been a really great public relations branding around the concept of caregiving, and the nuances of making sure you are comfortable and why you should be comfortable with your CNA or your home provider.
I just had an experience with a friend of mine whose mom needs to have, she works, her mom needs to have a caregiver at home with her when she's out. And her mom doesn't want any. And so the last time she brought someone in, the mother was very nice, and they sat out on the porch and chatted. Everything was going good, but the mother went inside and locked the door and wouldn't let them come back in, and told her daughter she doesn't want any, she don't want anybody coming to take care of her. But there are different levels of home care. Mm-hmm. And I know that for skilled nursing and I think one level below that, Medicare and Medicaid have to certify. Do they monitor the care in between after they've certified an entity to make sure that that entity is providing a quality level of care and not abusing patients? I'm talking about home care.
So like the accreditations for that organization and being able to do a report card.
Like for home care. Yeah.
Like joint commission.
If you go to Medicare.gov, you can look up any of the facilities or that's been credentialed by the government. And also each state has an Office of Long-Term Care, which I don't know if you all are aware. I know Yvette probably is. You're aware of the state coming in. Everybody's afraid of the state coming in. But what they do is they come in, they do regular evaluations of the facility, and they can do it on a schedule basis, surprise basis, and you just have to be ready. But you can go to Medicare.gov and pull up all of those facilities, and you can see the ones, you can see their ratings. You can pull up more information you probably ever want to know. but you can pull up their ratings, you can pull up their complaint history, you can pull up if they've had a complaint, what they did to correct it. All that's available to pull up. Yes, you can monitor that.
Absolutely. And in home care, that's where Betty and I would come in as RNs. They put an RN over the home health aides or the CNAs in a home, and we go out and do what they call supervised visits. And we go out and we observe the care that's been given, and we talk with the patient and we talk with the family as to how the caregiver is performing in the home. So they do a checks and balances on that.
Yeah, that we ended up, and the person that I was caregiving for until her children came down, in hospice care. And we found that to be just totally comprehensive. It was an extremely high level of care where everything was taken care of. So that's another level of care that, and it's run by the Home Health Care Service, and the head of that is an RN, and they have RNs. But yes, she was supervising some of the CNAs, some in training even, while she was taking care of my cousin.
That's good. That's good.
I have a question.
Hospice is really,
I'm sorry. You had mentioned something, Ms. Pettis, regarding the training at Harvard University, which to me builds so much credibility and so much trust in those individuals coming out of your organization. Can you describe what that training is and what that education is, that partnership? Because that's remarkable to me. That would be a high checkoff point in hiring a CNA or RN or those who are providing these services. They've had that level of quality training.
well, the program that we use is actually called Care Academy. It's actually an academy that we put our aides through. And the differentiator between a lot of caregivers, a home care program, is that we go, like I was saying earlier, we go beyond the bathing, the feeding, and whatever. We teach them how to recognize changes in the client. Now, granted, like I said, I am in personal care, so this is not a medical side, even though I'm the RN over the area.
Mm-hmm.
It is personal care, but you still have to be able to recognize changes in that patient, whether it's mental changes. If you know this patient is a diabetic, what are the diabetic changes, that you can at least report that to a medical person. And that's the big part of this training, is to recognize that even though you're not medical, you are personal care, to be able to recognize those changes and have the forethought to know, okay, this is something different with my patient. I need to let someone know. And so we go also at it at a 4-level approach, where we monitor the basic going home. Then we monitor, is this patient simply going into depression? We saw this a lot with last year with COVID, when families couldn't come in, they were just totally isolated. They needed someone to not just sit there and look at them or watch them. You watch TV, but what is this person's normal activity level? Do they like to play cards? Do they like to, go for a walk? Identify what those areas are, rather than just coming, oh, I'm a sitter. No, you're more than a sitter. So we approach it from that level. We try to combat falls, which, especially elder people, don't fall, you never walk again, that type of stuff. So what can we do to mitigate a fall risk? Is it the medication? Is it the rugs on the floor? Is it whatever it is? We teach them to look for those things rather than just sitting with the client.
That's good. Betty, you brought up a good point. You were talking about the medical and the non-medical side. I'm not sure that everybody is clear that you do not have to be certified to be a caregiver. There are non-medical caregivers. There's certain levels of caregiving. You can be hired by an agency for, quote unquote, what we call a comfort keeper, that you're just there to be a companion and to keep that patient comfortable. Then you have home health aides. Not all home health aides are certified by any governing state sanctity as well. So you need to make sure when you're hiring a caregiver that you're looking at the level of education and whether or not they're certified. Not that they're not educated to perform the task, but have they been medically certified? Because there is a difference levels of caregivers when you hire one. So thank you for bringing that up, because I'm not sure that everybody is really clear on that, because some people you bring in have had little training, and a lot of it has been, I took care of my grandmother at home. That doesn't
Right.
mean that they've been certified by anybody, but that does make them qualify as quote unquote a caregiver.
Right. We have certified nurses and aid. We usually use them more if we have a patient with a higher acuity. Granted, they're certified, but still in the personal care space. Then we have a level that is considered just, we call it rather than certified caregivers, they're just a PC. That actually is still taught through our program, and we partner with a local technical school. Well, actually, University of Arkansas Pulaski Tech is a technical school that we pull a lot of our caregivers from, because twofold, they need the experience, and we also need the caregivers that are not requiring the areas that we not require a certified. They are credentialed, but they're not certified. And so as long as you are under the umbrella of a facility that is bonded and licensed by your state, then you can be a qualified caregiver, even if you're not certified.
Awesome. That's a good information to understand, and we appreciate that. So we've already had a first part of the show chock full, and I see that Anthony is here, which means that we're about to take a commercial break. And Anthony, did you have some commentaries, or we're just going to head right in?
No, just go straight to the break.
Okay. Outstanding. Well, we are glad to have Betty Pettis to talk with us during National Caregiving Month about the various types of caregivers, some of the challenges, the training, and what can we learn as best practices as we look to take care of our loved ones or give advice to those who are taking care of a loved one as a family caregiver or all the way to a highly trained, certified, and registered professional. So welcome back. I'll turn it over to my colleagues because today this is a health and wellness lifestyle. And today I have a little crick in my neck and my throat. It's a rarity, but it's here. So I'm going to turn it over to you, ladies. And I know we've got some great questions. And I'm still stuck on a couple of things. I mean, I'm just really impressed by the training because that to me would have instilled so much trust and trying to select someone who really put forth that effort to get the training and therefore saw the skill set and what they were bringing to that experience as very credible and very important to them, that they took the extra step to get that training and that certification. So
what else is also important in what Betty was telling us that they do is that they screen them before they even get into the training to make sure that this person has the personality, the patience, and all of the things that are necessary to be a good caregiver. And I think that was also a key part of what Betty was talking about in choosing those people who would be working in her group.
Absolutely. And I can share, piggybacking on that, Dr. Christensen, in my days of schooling, they didn't give us psychiatric evaluations. They didn't check to see if you were mentally stable to be.
They didn't check us either.
They just let you go for it. And we found out later down the road that some people were not okay.
That's true.
And that's unfortunate.
That is very true. I've had that experience in working with individuals who were compromised in one way or another.
So that was great to hear. Betty, share with us the different types of caregivers. I know there's, we talked about the different trainings, but the different types. And by that, what I mean is the difference between someone who may be providing care for someone in a rehab or someone on an Alzheimer's locked unit or someone in a hospital.
Most of the people, if you're in a rehab, because, there's, in the medical world, there's kind of two different types of rehab. There's what we call, like the inpatient rehab hospital, and that's all they do, specifically rehab hospital. And most of the time in those areas, the caregiver, the CNA, will have to be certified. That's because they will be responsible for taking vital signs, that higher level of care. So taking vital signs, checking Foley catheters and different things like that. Now, the other type of rehab facility, let me go back to independent rehab facility. Before a person goes into that, you have to be it's almost like why we're going to the rehab. You have to be able to perform 3 hours per day of strenuous rehab therapy. Usually that has to do with a fall or a break, something that, you were pretty independent at home. You had this situation happen, and then you're going to go back out. The other type of rehab happens in the nursing home. And a lot of people get really, upset about that because all they see is a nursing home or skilled care facility. They don't see the rehab aspect of it. But you actually can get rehab in a skilled care facility and then be discharged home. The rehab in the skilled care facility is not as intense as it is as a freestanding or independent rehab hospital. So, and again, the ones in the skilled care facility will more than likely have to be certified because of the vital signs, because of the turning and different things like that. So you'll have a higher level of care there. And in the hospital, I think you said that. Now, of course, that's actually another level of care because you will be dealing with a more medical certified. You'll be doing what we call INO. You're monitoring that person's intake and output, not really documented, but emptying the devices to report to that primary care nurse. So you have to be able to know the more medical side when you're working in the hospital. The hospital obviously is going to be the highest level, and then it kind of decreases as you get to the skilled care level, the nursing home, in other words. But in all those areas, you will have to be certified to do that.
Do you, does your company train family members who may want to take over the caregiving, but just need to know what to do? I mean, just bathing and turning, and I'm a physician, and I was glad that my cousin had a nurse sister that would come and help sometimes. And, I learned a lot from, I've always learned a lot from nurses. I'll tell you that. I'll admit that. But I
you
learned a lot from my
would
cousin.
still have to be, as a family member, you would still have to go to the same type training, because what you're doing, even though it's your family member, maybe you're taking care on a family level, but when you're taking as a caregiver, okay, you're bathing, you turn that patient and you see something that, you see something on the skin. You need to be able to recognize that there's a change going, then what do you do about it? So even if you're family members, and we do have that sometimes happen, they have to go through the same training, because as a family member, you may not be qualified to be a caregiver in the sense of what we're talking about.
Mhm.
Yeah, you're taking care of your mom, your whoever, and I was a caregiver for my mother and my mother-in-law. There's a difference there, because if you were hired, say for instance, by my company, there are certain expectations that may not be expected as a family caregiver. There are certain things that you have to report and be able to recognize, but you would go through the same screening, the psychological screening, the same training as if you were not related or a family member.
And, I think sometimes, when you look at a family, let's say you have multiple siblings, or you have relatives that can come around, let's say an elderly person needs to be cared for. It's the same scenario. Do we quit your job to become a stay-at-home mom because it's less expensive to do it that way than to pay for childcare, as an example? Do you have any comments around the personal family contracts or agreements in which someone in the family would actually take on a compensated role, because they're going to have to spend a quality amount of time, and then have that being reimbursed through taxes or Medicare, Medicaid? Can you chat a little bit about that? Because I think sometimes our family members just can't juggle it, and they have to come to that really hard decision. This may be a season in their life where their career is put under the Family Medical Leave Act, or they have to move into a different career that allows them to accommodate caring as well as, generating income. But, that was something that we had talked about in our family, and how would we make that adjustment if necessary, and then how would we compensate accordingly?
I think that's very important to talk about early, very early, to make those agreements. Because typically what happens if you okay, we're going to take care of mom. Well, that sounds good until that actually happens.
Mhm.
One of the ways is to, as Dr. Christensen was saying, is to become a paid caregiver. So if you do have one person that is kind of responsible, at least they're being compensated for it. Now, will that compensate you as far as your professional job as caregiver? Probably not. But at least if you have to maybe change your job to go to something part-time in order to take care of mom, you're still getting something in to compensate you. The conversation needs to be taken early. And I'm just going to give you a personal example. I tell you, my mother and my mother-in-law had the same amount of sisters and brothers, but in my family, I think it's because I was a nurse, it all fell on me. I mean, I would work night shift, I'd get off work, I'd drive 40 miles, take care of her, and do this thing all over again.
Yeah.
And everybody was like, well, Betty is the nurse. Well, it was wearing me out.
Yeah.
By contrast, my husband's mother is a bunch of kids. Everybody decided which day they were going to take care of mom.
Hmm.
Which day, and they stood, well, in my family, we made a contract, but no one held to it. On his side, they made a contract and everybody held to it. No one had to quit their job because it didn't fall on one person. So
Right.
making those contracts early and getting them to understand, okay, if it's your day, it's your day. You need to decide on ahead of time, how are you going to handle it? Maybe you need to start putting some money aside now, or maybe if mom can't afford it, maybe you need to buy a insurance policy that will help cover some of those things. But whatever it is, that conversation and those decisions need to be made early.
Excellent. And those are great testimonies, because I don't think that families want to get in front of that conversation and any more than they want to implement it. But it is a conversation that needs to take place, particularly since we're living longer with so many chronic diseases, that you could be in a very long-term case. I know someone just yesterday, we had the conversation around dementia, and that person lived for 20 years, and it was could not be on one member of the family to take care of. It just was impossible. And then other family members who, as a result of carrying the stress and strain, found themselves in a position of the patient and needed care. So it became this vicious cycle without really identifying A, resources, B, putting together a family contract or a personal care agreement that everyone could live by. Very important, as you said. And then figuring out the equitable compensation so that it was not so burdensome when necessary.
It's interesting that that's common in Vietnamese families. I mean, we get our nails done, and I was talking to my nail tech, and she was saying how that they send money home to one sibling whose job it is to take care of the parents. And then when they take vacation, they each go home for a week to give that full-time caregiver a vacation. And we don't quite have that over here in the United States. It's not even a conversation. It's just what's done. It's a matter of which child that's going to fall, that responsibility is going to fall on to take care of the parents, and the other siblings send that other sibling finances for their bills and the parents' bills, and then they go give them a reprieve for vacation, which I thought was excellent. I thought that was excellent. And they don't believe in nursing homes.
Yeah.
That's
So,
true
Betty,
at cultures that you'll find around around the world, and those cultures that are very strongly in communities here in TAC. When working at a hospital, we talked about those who are East Indian, and they actually wanted to have their own facility because of the nuances of caring for someone from India or that part of the world, Pakistan. It was very different. But that's an interesting conversation around the cultural nuances, the sense of being very clear. How do we care for our elderly within our family members within different cultures, right here under the bigger societal culture of the U.S.
Mm-hmm. So, Betty, do you ever find that yourself and your staff having to counsel a family when it's time to really end the home care and put their family member into a facility? That's such a difficult decision for so many families, and a lot of guilt around whether they want to put their family member into a home rather than take care of them. But there sometimes comes a time when it's just too much, and it has to happen. Do you find your workers having to counsel patients around that, families around that?
Well, not
Frozen again.
the workers directly, but yes, we do have to counsel them. If it gets too much for that caregiver, then it's actually better for the patient to be put in a quality facility. Because if you've got a caregiver that is wearing out, that can't take care, they can't take care of themselves, they can't take care of, the family, it would be better to put that family member in a facility. And at least, you have someone going to check on them. There's someone there 24/7, as opposed to you trying to, or that the caregiver trying to do all this, and it's really not helpful for the caregiver. The caregiver has to be healthy in order to take care of someone. And if you are wearing yourself, I'm gonna tell you a story about when I used to work at I had this man in the ICU, and his wife would not go to sleep. She wouldn't go home. She wouldn't do any of this stuff. And we kept telling her, you can't do this forever. You know, we're here 24/7. We're watching your husband. And eventually she died of a heart attack. He was in there for a heart attack, but she actually died. He walked out. So you have to be able to take care of yourself too, rather than, focusing. It is the patient, but you have to take care of yourself. And I'm a real advocate of that. There's respite care where a caregiver can, maybe you're not ready to put them in the facility right now, but you just need a break. You can send them to the facility for a respite care, or have a respite caregiver come in there, something so you can take care of yourself during this, because it's going to be a long haul. And we do talk to families, say, would be better for your mom or your dad if they were in this facility getting 24-hour care than you stay awake and you're trying to drive and you're sleeping and you're not eating correctly, that type of stuff. Yes, that conversation comes up a lot.
Great. I'd like to talk about this new concept that we have that healthcare has been moving towards, called the patient-centered model. And part of that is aging in place. And to me, this is where caregivers can have the biggest role in families' lives, is to allow that person to age in place. I was at a exit meeting for the first time in my life, didn't even know exactly what I was getting into, but someone invited me, not realizing I was planning for my exit from this world. And part of that was, what is it that you want to do when you can no longer take care of yourself or things start happening to you? And I said, I want to age in place. I do not want to be removed from my home. And so that puts a positive spin on caregiving, because then you're able to bring people into the home to allow that person to age in place. And so I'd like to know, Betty, as far as aging in place, allowing that person, how do you keep consistent caregivers? Because continuity of care is key, as you know, in caregiving. What would you suggest to a family member to keep that constant continuity of care in order to allow someone to age in place?
Well, there are several options. One of the options is to have, if it's 24-hour caregiver, you can actually do that. And statistics show, which you already know, that patients do much better in their own environment. And you can opt for a 24-hour caregiver. You can opt for maybe a 16-hour caregiver, and maybe the family member comes in the 8 hours. But continuity of care is important. And what we do, we match the caregiver with the personality of the patient. Now, we have shifted caregivers around. If we could see that personality didn't mesh, maybe they work better with Mrs. Jones, but not Mrs. Smith. So you have to be able to observe and recognize that this is not a good match. It's just not simply putting a caregiver in there. There's monitoring and adjustments that have to be made. And when you get that right mix, you can see the change in the caregiver. The patient. So that comes with monitoring. That comes with being intentional with what you're doing, and just not checking off the box. We put caregiver in here. You have to be able to match the personality with the caregiver, the personality of the patient with the personality of make that change if you see it. And sometimes that it may make the caregiver upset, but that's not what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the patient right now. We want the best for that patient.
And to that same question, Yvette, what's interesting that I'm finding, because I'm exploring that in some areas of my life, the level, everything from how do I remodel my home now in middle age, or other real estate that where there's a trend in these generational homes, where they're already building into a home structure the fact that you're going to have not the extra room and a bathroom for your elderly relative, but actually almost a mini apartment with a small kitchenette inside of those homes. And so you're contemplating buying those, particularly in areas where a lot of retirees flock to, so that either they are living in the primary part of the house or you have a young relative living in the smaller apartment. And I think that's a big consideration, particularly for those members who are downsizing and those individuals who can no longer live in their home, that maybe this is how you begin to have that age in place conversation, that it's not the same house, it's another house that accommodates, being equipped for fall risk reduction, all of the home health aids that allow that elderly or that incapacitated person to move around, and learning what devices and what technology is out there that supports that age in placing, that allows for, all of us to feel comfortable, being in home or having a monitoring ability to peer into a home where we're taking care of someone. My 91-year-old aunt used to walk up a flight of steps like you would not believe in her house. I'm sure why she is in great health, absolutely spry, but she clearly is having, a lot of different fall risk issues. So we finally, literally just this year, actually she's 92, she just turned 92 in April, moved her downstairs. My thought process was, why didn't that happen like 10 years ago? But, I think there was a mindset, that's her exercise, but we had to come around to the understanding that's not her exercise. That's actually a place of danger. And we had to better understand what we were putting her in risk for. So now she lives downstairs on the very first floor where she can access everything that she needs. And, she goes upstairs and no one's monitoring her. I don't know what we'll do about that, getting her back down, but suffice to say, it's making those modifications in the home that make good sense, as well as having, so there, I'm wondering, Ms. Pettis, in light of that question, are there companies that come in to do those kinds of age in place assessments? We just went through Common Sense and we started to modify, but are there formal companies that actually will come in and provide that service? And I think we're going to have one more chance for you to answer that question, because I see Tony was at the end.
Right. I'm going to have to leave to head out to another meeting, but thank you, Betty, for joining us, and see you next week,
See you.
ladies.
Thank you, Donna. So if someone wanted to get a hold of your company, let's make sure that we at least have an opportunity for individuals to know how to get in touch with you in your community.
Well, I want to quickly just answer that question about the resources.
Yes.
In most states, you have the Area Agency on Aging that will come do a home assessment. And my company is a national company. It's called HomeWell. We're in all 50 states.
And do you have a website? Because that's excellent that you are nationwide.
Yes, homewell.com. That's the national, but our website is Homewell Cares Central Arkansas.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much, Betty. And this is wrapping up our segment this month on caregiving. I want to just acknowledge every caregiver who listens to us, and we want to thank you for being, courageous enough to provide care for your loved one. Or if you work in a hospital, a nursing home, whatever your setting is, as a caregiver, we salute you too. We know that it's not easy. We've all done it. We empathize with you, and we want you to know that we're grateful and we appreciate you for taking the challenge.
Well, that's a great way to end the show. We hand it over to you, Tony, and thank you, Ms. Pettis.
Thank you, Betty Pettis, for being
You're welcome.
on the program. We appreciate it. Look forward to having you back, Linda, and of course Yvette, and former Congressman Donna Christensen. Coming up next is the new segment on the Marketplace TV and the Shopping Network. I'll be joined by my colleague Jessica Kyler. She's on her way. Ladies, have a great and safe day. We'll talk soon.
All right, thank you.